But I don't even know about that. But regardless, he knows the game. And then he marries Melania. And then more and more, like, he was in charge when Epstein went down. Mm-hmm. He was the only one that when Epstein got arrested.
In the middle of America's relentless political storm, the whispers in the shadows are no longer just whispers. They're becoming an obsession for the media. A chilling truth is surfacing, one that doesn't just touch on the mysterious past of a first lady, but exposes a national security blind spot that could be hiding inside the walls of the White House bedroom itself. Epstein knew her well. This story doesn't begin with romance, but with something far more calculated, a plan carefully set in motion. The Kremlin isn't even pretending anymore. After months of publicly praising Donald Trump as a valuable asset, Moscow's tone flipped overnight. Suddenly, Russian state media stopped treating him as an ally and instead zeroed in on the woman beside him. Melania Trump became their target. Kremlin-controlled TV began openly tearing her down, blaming her for Trump's hardline shift against Putin. They pointed to his promises to send more weapons to Kyiv and his push for harsher sanctions on Moscow as proof. On the state-run talk show 60 Minutes, host Olga Skabeva wasted no time branding the First Lady a Ukrainian agent, flashing provocative old photos to humiliate and discredit her. The Kremlin-friendly newspaper Vzglyad went even further, publishing an editorial titled The Underestimated Danger of Melania Trump to Russia. They mocked Trump, saying he should be buying her shoes instead of selling missiles to Ukraine. In their eyes, she was no longer a glamorous fashion figure. She was a threat, an agent, a dangerous Melania Trump. This sudden and dramatic 180 degrees raises a disturbing question. Are they exposing a secret they've known for years? Are they sending a warning to the world that they know exactly where Trump's weakness lies because they may have been the ones who helped put it there? And while Russia paints her as a Ukrainian agent, a darker, more unnerving...
Epstein knows her well. The first time Donald Trump and Melania have is on his airplane.
Theory is gaining traction, one that suggests the truth might cut even deeper. The story of Melania Trump isn't just about politics or a glamorous first lady. It's the kind of decades-long operation you'd expect to see in a spy thriller, except this time, America was the target. An operation woven through money, power, and hidden alliances. And only now are the pieces being put together. Her path to the White House began long before she stood beside Donald Trump on the campaign trail. It ran through an underground network where Jeffrey Epstein pulled strings behind the scenes. A world where the guest lists were written in shadow.
Where there were parties that were frequently thrown for very rich Manhattan elites, businessmen, to mingle and find very young models from Eastern Europe. And Melania.
And the rules didn't apply to the rich and powerful. One man in that world was Paolo Zampoli. To most, just a flashy friend of Trump. But beneath the surface, he had connections to both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Connections that led to circles of young Eastern European models, flown in to mingle at exclusive parties with the elite. And those parties weren't held in quaint cafes or elegant ballrooms. The Kit Kat Club wasn't a place for romance, it was a stage. A stage where power was exchanged for beauty, and beauty was groomed for something much darker. This was the first real breach, a perfectly positioned asset, carefully embedded. A woman with a tangled past, drawn into the orbit of a billionaire on the verge of becoming president, placed there by an international web of competing intelligence networks. To them, she was a dream come true. No risky maneuvers were necessary, just patience. And patience paid off. When Trump, as president, began hardening his stance on the war in Ukraine, the Kremlin saw their opening. Like hunters who had tracked their prey for years, they decided it was time to unleash the weapon they had been quietly monitoring. The narrative was already written. They simply had to bring it to life. In one telling example, Trump recounted to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office, according to USA Today, that he went home and told the First Lady about a great conversation he'd had with Vladimir Putin. Her reaction, as reported, raised eyebrows, subtly revealing details that seemed out of place. Russia seized the moment, crafting the image of an American president being influenced by a foreign agent right inside his own home. They made the attack sting even more by reviving Melania's past. Old photos, recycled headlines, calculated ridicule, all designed to humiliate Trump. And while the geopolitical implications were staggering, Trump's fury was focused not on national security, but on a perceived personal insult. He fumed over Joe Rogan's public comments about Melania's looks, missing entirely the deeper threat. The truth is, Trump's inability to see past his own ego was dangerous. And the path Melania took to cement her place in America was just as murky. She secured the coveted Einstein visa for individuals with extraordinary abilities, then used the very chain migration policy her husband had called a disaster to bring her parents to the U.S., a process federal law has allowed since 1965. Once in the White House, the performance didn't stop. The Be Best campaign was pure theater. Her Republican National Convention speech? A word-for-word lift from Michelle Obama's, without apology or shame. When Trump scandals exploded, like the Access Hollywood tape, she brushed them aside, likening her nearly 60-year-old husband's behavior to that of a teenage boy. It was the reaction of a partner protecting an investment, not a wife defending her family. Trump has always had an uncanny ability to compartmentalize, completely, coldly, and without hesitation. Melania knows exactly who she married, and Trump knows exactly who he married. Their arrangement is clear, transactional, and mutually beneficial. But now, with the 2024 campaign heating up, the carefully crafted facade appears to be cracking. Melania has all but vanished from the public eye. Traditionally, political wives stand firmly by their husbands during storms, but in Trump's case, her absence is deafening. Perhaps her most unfiltered moment came not in a formal speech, but in a joke from a comedian, one that may have been closer to the truth than people realized. In the joke, she describes celebrating Trump's COVID hospitalization with a party, fireworks, and a sleepless night in the Lincoln bedroom, free from her husband's presence. Yet, behind the humor lies something darker. Trump's fury and ego have blinded him to the true threat, not from his political enemies, but from within his own circle. While Democrats and Republicans wage their battles in Congress, a glaring national security loophole remains untouched: Melania Trump. To some, she represents a lingering shadow of Jeffrey Epstein's world, a pawn for Kremlin influence, and a puzzle Trump either refuses or is unable to solve. The implications are chilling. The man once called the most powerful in the world could be undone by a weakness he still mistakes for love. For those who believed in his promise to make America great again, the bitter truth may be that the real breach wasn't from foreign armies or political rivals, but from an Eastern European model with a concealed past who walked straight into the White House. Trump's name continues to surface in Epstein-related files and explosive podcast revelations. Joe Rogan recently sent shockwaves across millions of listeners by peeling back layers on Trump's connections in a way no mainstream outlet had dared. The Department of Justice has never formally interviewed Melania, a fact that leaves many wondering why. Lawmakers like Adam Schiff are now calling for certain files to be released, pointing out that the previous administration had for years to act and did nothing. Legal insiders argue that if Melania had damaging information, she could have used it to cut a deal. But perhaps silence has been her most powerful shield. She remained quiet, served her time in a comfortable prison setting, and emerged untouched. In a game of high-stakes power and secrets, saying nothing at all might be the deadliest move of all. MAGA's most prominent podcast voice, Joe Rogan, dropped a political grenade on Donald Trump in a recent episode, one that has rippled far beyond his usual audience. Rogan, once a vocal supporter of Trump's 2024 campaign, openly questioned the official narrative surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death and criticized Kash Patel's dismissive statements on the matter. The discussion didn't stop at Epstein. Rogan and his guest dissected new revelations about a secretive meeting between Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. According to their account, Blanche spent 9 hours over 2 days with Maxwell just last Friday, and yet no press, no victims' attorneys, and no public officials were allowed to know what was discussed. The move is unprecedented, Normally, such prison interviews are handled by lower-level prosecutors, not the Justice Department's second-in-command. What makes it even more eyebrow-raising is Blanche's history. He has defended Trump in several high-profile court cases and has close ties to Maxwell's own lawyer, David Marcus. This has fueled speculation that the meeting was not about justice at all, but rather a covert negotiation to protect Trump's reputation in the wake of his name appearing in the newly unsealed Epstein files. Victim's attorney Jack Scarilla, representing around 20 survivors, said he formally requested to attend the Maxwell interview and was denied, a decision that only adds to the perception of political interference. Some sources allege that Trump sidelined Pam Bondi, a loyalist whose name in the Epstein documents had become a liability, and instead deployed Blanche as the cleaner, safer emissary. The suspicion is that Maxwell could be offered a quiet deal, keep certain damaging information buried in exchange for leniency. The opacity of the process, the exclusion of victims, and the political connections at play make the whole episode reek of a cover-up. Meanwhile, Trump himself was nowhere near the controversy. He was in Scotland on a 4-day working vacation, an apparent attempt to draw attention away from the Epstein scandal. The trip came just a week after he banned the Wall Street Journal from covering his movements, following 2 explosive Wall Street Journal reports about his ties to Epstein. But the reception overseas was far from warm. Aberdeen and Edinburgh saw protests over his visit, driven by outrage over both the Epstein revelations and the ongoing Gaza crisis. Critics suggest the timing was no accident. With Trump abroad, his allies at home, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, could act with fewer eyes watching. Case in point, on July 22, 2025, Representative Tim Burchett successfully pushed a motion to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell for a public hearing, a move unanimously approved by the Government Operations Subcommittee. But almost immediately, Johnson shut down the House, giving Blanche the uninterrupted window he needed to finish his closed-door talks with Maxwell. The most jarring twist? Just months ago, Mike Johnson was loudly demanding transparency on the Epstein files. Now he appears to be shielding Trump, helping to bury the very truth he once claimed to seek. The victims remain in limbo, the public is still denied answers, and the most powerful figures in Washington seem more committed to protecting their political king than delivering justice. It's not just Joe Rogan stirring the pot about a possible Trump Maxwell cover-up. George Conway is now publicly raising alarm bells as well. In a recent CNN segment, the veteran attorney shredded the Justice Department's handling of the Maxwell interviews, calling it ridiculously unusual and pure damage control. Conway found it laughable that Trump would claim he hadn't been informed about a 9-hour meeting between Ghislaine Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, especially when Blanche and other senior DOJ officials like Emile Bove were essentially serving as Trump's personal criminal defense lawyers in government positions. He made the point bluntly. The DOJ under Trump is unique in history for being staffed with people chosen not to uphold the law, but to protect one man. Conway's warning was clear. Putting someone so closely tied to Trump at the center of such a politically sensitive interview risks destroying the objectivity and credibility of the entire investigation. And if that happens, the public's faith in justice won't just be eroded, it'll be obliterated. While Conway dissected the legal rot, another subplot has quietly unfolded: Melania Trump's vanishing act. Traditionally, embattled men in the political spotlight have a loyal wife standing beside them. But in Trump's case, neither Melania nor Ivanka has appeared. According to reporting, Melania has never shown up to any of Trump's courtroom appearances. When an aide once asked her to attend, she laughed and said, "Nice try." Behind the silence, there's a deeper calculation. Sources claim Melania was far more involved in Trump's Epstein connections than she admits. Introduced to Trump through a model agent with ties to both him and Epstein, she allegedly first slept with Trump on Epstein's plane. If Melania betrays Trump, it won't be in a bombshell press conference. It'll be a precision strike. A discreetly leaked deposition. A backroom deal trading information for legal immunity. She'll recast herself as a victim escaping an abusive, corrupt husband, rewriting her own origin story one last time. The wholesome Fashion Week meet-cute she sold for decades, a coy refusal to give Trump her number in 1998, unravels under scrutiny. Journalist Michael Wolff and others have painted a darker picture. That night wasn't a high society gala, but a party linked to the Kit Kat Club, part of a world where young Eastern European models were paraded for the elite. This isn't just a fuzzy memory. It's a calculated lie that's now collapsing. Melania didn't stumble into a romance. She stepped into a pre-built ecosystem of wealth, exploitation, and control, an environment where Trump and Epstein were not merely acquaintances, but partners in power. Epstein once joked about their post-divorce arrangement. I inherited Trump, and Ghislaine inherited Ivana. Now, with Trump's name freshly splashed across the Epstein files and his legal allies meeting Maxwell behind closed doors, the whole fragile architecture of the Trump-Melania myth is shaking. For her, survival may mean turning the knife quietly and making sure it's aimed where it will hurt the most. Epstein once bragged openly about the strange post-divorce arrangement he had with Trump, how you'd never see him at the house like you would Ivana, and you'd never see her at the offices like you would Trump. Among their circles, it was common knowledge they were best friends. In that environment, Melania adapted quickly. Her guiding compass has always been self-preservation, whatever the cost. When the Access Hollywood tape surfaced, Trump caught on record making vile comments. She didn't recoil in shock. She reframed it as nothing more than locker room talk, painting her husband's words as immature banter rather than the behavior of a 59-year-old man. That wasn't the loyalty of a devoted wife. It was the shrewd calculation of a business partner protecting the shared brand. This ruthless pragmatism revealed itself again during the Stormy Daniels scandal. Melania's anger wasn't directed at Trump for cheating. It was aimed squarely at Vogue for giving Daniels publicity. In her world, the real crime wasn't infidelity. It was tarnishing her image. She fumed that Anna Wintour had shot the porn hooker for the magazine, showing no concern for the public humiliation of the affair itself. For Melania, truth, loyalty, and ethics are disposable luxuries. What matters is power, image, and survival. Now, the Epstein case has escalated far beyond tabloid gossip. It's a federal criminal investigation into child sex trafficking involving some of the most powerful figures in the world. This isn't just another scandal, it's an existential threat. Melania can see Trump sinking fast, and the lifeboat of the Republican Party is already taking on water. The party's clumsy cover-up efforts are only making matters worse, exposing incompetence at every turn. Some in Congress are openly asking why Trump allies seem so desperate to bury files, while others vent their disgust at the two-tiered justice system that grants an Einstein visa to a model with no such accolades while everyday Americans struggle to get by. This growing public outrage is volatile. When the justice system loses credibility, when politicians cultivate distrust, people begin to crave justice by any means, even mob rule. And while Trump swings at phantom enemies, the true danger may be sitting beside him, biding her time, blade in hand. Melania knows more than anyone, and in a fight for survival, information is the deadliest weapon. The Epstein scandal is stripping away the last masks of the elite. In the chaos, it won't be the strongest who survive, but the most ruthless and calculating. And Melania Trump has proved she excels in that arena. The most devastating blow to Trump may not come from prosecutors, journalists, or political rivals. It may come from the woman who helped him build his empire of lies, the one who knows every secret and now faces the risk of going down with him. That would be the cruelest possible ending for Donald Trump and a fitting emblem for an America that has lost faith in its institutions. Now, with new footage surfacing, questions about political interference in Epstein's case grow louder. The irony? The right-wing machine that once weaponized Epstein's crimes to demonize the Clintons and other liberal elites now faces the possibility that their own champion may be fatally entangled in the very web they use to condemn others. Epstein, once Trump's close friend, has now been recast in MAGA mythology as a creature of the Democratic Party. Logic has been abandoned, evidence dismissed, and Trump's followers are urged to replace facts with faith. The transformation works only if you forget large parts of history and ignore inconvenient truths. Yes, Epstein really did have an extraordinary network of wealthy and influential contacts, But twisting that reality into a sprawling left-wing conspiracy has always required mental gymnastics and selective memory. The contradictions became glaring in February when Trump's own Department of Justice staged a heavily hyped document dump on the Epstein case. They even invited far-right influencers to the White House to collect fat binders of material before anyone else had access. But when those influencers opened the files, they found nothing new, and certainly nothing to support the fever dream theories about Epstein's death or his supposed ties to Democratic elites. Suddenly, the same Trump operatives who had eagerly pushed Epstein conspiracies were scrambling to walk them back. Kash Patel, one of Trump's most loyal lieutenants, went on TV to insist that the wild stories MAGA believers had swallowed for years simply didn't exist. "Where's the videotape?" he demanded rhetorically. "If there was a video and I'm in charge, don't you think you'd see it?" The irony was brutal. These were the very people who had sown the seeds of false hope, now frantically trying to prune the poisonous plant before it consumed them. What had started as a truth-seeking crusade had morphed into an exercise in damage control, as the bomb they built began ticking in their own hands. But the most dangerous development didn't come from Democrats or the media. It came from a completely unexpected direction. Elon Musk, the mercurial billionaire, suddenly lobbed a grenade into Trump world by claiming the former president's name appeared in the Epstein files. The feud between Trump and Musk escalated sharply, and the tension deepened when a former friend of Musk told Politico that the tech mogul would do whatever it takes to harm the president. Musk's own cryptic tweet, "It's fascinating to escalate this talking about Trump, really fascinating, but I'll hold back for now," sent Trump's camp into panic mode. Ironically, none of this chaos would have existed without the theatrics of Pam Bondi. It was Bondi who first dangled the fantasy of an Epstein client list about to be released, keeping MAGA loyalists hooked. At CPAC, when asked if the list might ever see daylight, she replied with grave seriousness, "It's sitting on my desk right now to review." She added that the review had been ordered directly by Trump, lumping it in with JFK and MLK files to give it an air of historic significance. It was pure stagecraft, an empty promise designed to keep the faithful believing, no matter how thin the evidence or how far the truth had been stretched.